Hi, I wanted to make this video to talk about anxiety. Um, Anxiety has been something that I dealt with in my personal life for many, many years until I got the proper help to overcome it. And I wanted to make this video to help out other people that are going through similar situations and might not know the best resources that they can do for help, and also to let people know about the things that I had learned about the kind of holistic approach to healing from a condition that can be so hard and difficult to have go on and really derail your life to a significant degree. So I at one point was diagnosed with OCD, panic attacks, and generalized anxiety disorder from the age of 4 or 5 until my early teenage years. I was on some kind of SSRI for anxiety, mainly intrusive thoughts and things of that nature. When I was 18, my intrusive thoughts kind of took into a more like obsessive compulsive disorder component to it, where there's a lot of mental compulsions and mental obsessions, and intrusive thinking, and compulsive mental compulsions that I would engage in to try to alleviate the anxiety and distress and uncertainty of thought. Around the same time thereafter, at one point around the age of 18, I also started getting really bad anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and they would last for hours on end, and my heart rate would skyrocket, and I feel like I was literally about to die, and it was really, really difficult. So I saw a psychiatrist that put me on something called gabapentin, Neurontin, and Celexa, and then Ativan as needed. So they gave me like really high doses of this gabapentin and a small dose of the SSRI, and then the Ativan, which I didn't really take, but it's just like an as needed thing for the if you're having a really bad anxiety attack. But through a few years of doing that, I found that the medication, for me anyways, didn't really help because I had that fear of fear locked in so badly, and all these other behavioral things that I was doing, and the way that I was having relationship with anxiety, having relationship with these thoughts and feelings, where it felt like I was in this mental prison for my own thoughts, and that sense of limitation on myself, and just feeling like anxiety kind of owned me in a way, if that makes sense. Because I would always every day just be so afraid of that next panic attack, and I'd have these awful feelings of anxiety that anybody that's been through it knows what this is like, the various ways in which it feels and all that weird stuff that happens to you in your body physiologically, the thoughts and your mind, and all the weird internal symptoms, and that our mind can't help but contract on all these different symptoms that we have going on. But yeah, it was a really hard time, and around the time that I was about 21, I finally came across something called Panic Away, which was my first glimpse into more of a holistic self-help approach, and learning about certain things from behavioral therapy. Because previous to that, I just thought and knew of anxiety or depression as something of a chemical imbalance that you have to deal with the rest of your life, and it's just something about your brain not getting a certain amount of X serotonin, whatever chemical, and that you need to supplement it with this extra medication to help balance out your neurotransmitters. But that doesn't like really help somebody that is engaging in the certain behaviors and habits which really reinforce the anxiety being there in the first place, and the fear that keeps everything locked in place. Being through it and talking to different people, and I've talked over hundreds and hundreds of people. I was on like different forums and stuff, and reading different books from certain psychiatrists, Dr. David Burns, as example. A lot of certain doctors agree that, you know, there is not necessarily a chemical imbalance as the source of anxiety or depression, as it is that a lot of it is more about us and our relationship with our thoughts and feelings and our behaviors that reinforce it. And certainly that was the case for me. I was doing all this stuff that just kept it locked in. Like, for example, I started becoming more uncomfortable leaving a certain range from my house without having Ativan in my car somewhere, or just access to something. And that sense of like, there was just this sense of this anticipatory anxiety about how I'm going to handle situations in life when those feelings occur. The next time these feelings are going to happen, how am I going to handle this? How am I going to cope? And not having like the tools to handle it properly, you know, just feeling like I gotta have this thing with me to fix the problem. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with medication or taking a staunch view on things. I just think that it's important that we step back from our own views and see things from a different perspective that is not only just our own. So for anybody that's getting help with medication or it helps them, I think that's great and fine. I personally feel like there are some things about medications that I just don't really like, or certain side effects that I didn't really want to deal with or had go on for myself. It didn't really help me. It didn't make me feel much better. And to me, in my experience and talking to others and things I've seen and what had helped myself, the whole chemical imbalance thing doesn't really seem like it makes much sense from experiencing, and how I got much more well very fast in a totally different way. That kind of, you know, well, I will just end that part on saying that Dr. David Burns has a book called Feeling Good, and some other things he writes about, something about anxiety. And he has a chapter in a couple of those books that talks about the whole chemical imbalance theory and his views on it. And I've never went to medical school, so I'm not going to try to ascertain that, you know, I know more than anybody else. I don't. But I do know that there's not one person that holds the truth of all things, you know. You can be a medical doctor and you can learn about certain things in medical school, but you also have an agenda from pharmaceutical companies that are trying to make profit and sell revenue, you know, and there's this kind of aspect of a business model behind it too. So of course they're going to have facts and statements or statistics to state why something that they have is beneficial and useful for people. And if it helps, it's great. You know, if it helps, it's awesome. But don't ever take any one particular thing, even what I say, as absolute truth. The sense that we can just question things on our own and make our own judgments through experiencing ourselves. But in terms of anxiety and dealing with it and the relationship of anxiety, one of the things that I learned through Panic Away, and this other thing that I wanted to mention now, was probably the one book that I would say helped me the absolute most, and also the only book that I believe myself a person would need to fully recover from an anxiety condition. And that book is called At Last Alive by Paul David. I feel like he encapsulated all of the information so that we have a sense of knowing what's going on and what to do, which ironically is more about what we're going to let go of doing. But he has a website called At Last a Life. I think it's a UK website, United Kingdom, because he's from London or somewhere around there. But that book, I would highly suggest anybody that's really struggling or trying to find certain ways to help themselves. Absolutely, that book would have everything that you would need, and it certainly helped me more ways than I could imagine. And the things that he talks about in there, it really just encapsulates the whole place of somebody that's in that state of being with anxiety and those things that he himself went through for years, over a decade, and the tools and strategies that we can practice and apply to ourselves to really get well. But the single most important fundamental step is our attitude. And the importance in that. So, the things that I would mention, I've taken on from that book, Paul David, At Last a Life by Barry McDonough, and through my own experiences as someone of the practice of spirituality and meditation and mindfulness. There is the unconditional acceptance when we're dealing with any experience that's going on in our awareness. Whether that's anxiety or depression, an intrusive thought, a fixation that we can't help but put our attention to, that draws our attention to a certain thing going on externally outside ourselves, or something going on in our body that creates this fear and anxiety response, whatever it might be, okay? Whatever might be going on for you in your experience here and now, in each moment, allowing everything to be exactly how it is. Adopting the attitude of unconditional acceptance. Unconditional acceptance is the practice of accepting everything as it is without trying to change anything. So when we have anxiety and we're having those setbacks and we feel like we're back to square one, having the unconditional acceptance that this experience is exactly how it is and there's nothing to change, there's nowhere to go, and there's nothing that we need to do. It's just letting go of the doer. Because we can have this experience happen and be a part of our total experience in this present moment. And the more that we are allowing and embracing of these things as they occur, the less power and pull they have over us. Because we have that sense of compassion and care, that things matter to us, that your life matters, that you're important, and that you care, that you value yourself, and that things hold meaning to you. Even when they feel like they don't, even when you feel like your heart's closed, even when you feel like you just want to put your hands up and run away, whatever might happen, even then, whatever experience that might be, simultaneously at the same time, on that deeper level, in your own inner being, that absolute okayness, that absolute acceptance, that you care about yourself and that things matter. So we're not trying to change anything. We're just resting as awareness, allowing everything to be exactly how it is in this experience, whatever you might be going through, whatever might be happening for you now, letting it be there. Because that resistance, that pushing away or clinging on to feeling differently than the experience now, if you are trying to feel better or to get better or to feel a different way than you're feeling, or you're pushing a certain thing away, that is the entanglement which causes things to stick. And things will stick as long as we are resisting our experience. When you drop resistance, there is nothing that this flowing river will rub up against, and therefore it will just flow. And resting as awareness, we see these things move through us, as us, in forms that come up in our awareness and consciousness. They move, and they have feeling and emotion, and there's a sense of energy, right? But it does not define us. There's nothing personal about it. And holding that sense of care and compassion for ourselves, we let that be and let it move through. There's nothing to change and there's nothing to resist, right? We are just resting as awareness. Think of it like the entire sky. When you look in the sky, there's clouds that come by. There's cloudy days. There's things that are happening in your experience, but you are that sky. And the passing phenomenon in feeling that can happen in the body, you can feel in the body, that's attached and linked to the mind, thought, and the thoughts. These thoughts and feelings are passing experiences like clouds in the sky. And when the thought and feeling connects and merges, it feels like something must be true. Because I feel a certain way or I think a certain way, therefore I feel this and think this, therefore it could be valid. And if it's an intrusive or scary thought, somebody can set a kind of panic, through that experience of, oh my God, is it true? Like, would I actually do something like that? Or could this actually happen? Or what's going to happen to me? Or am I okay? And I'm like, yeah, of course you're okay. And nothing's happening. All of this stuff that's occurring is only in the mind. And it has that body attachment. And we have this, when you have anxiety, that oversensitized nervous system, that oversensitization, the stimulation, the sympathetic nervous system constantly firing, but you have that state. So it's not just thoughts and feelings as a single isolated thing, right? There is that overall experiencing of anxiety and that anxious, riddled body state. But that gets better when we leave it alone and we resist this experience as little as possible. We're allowing everything to be as it is. Paul David talks about, this analogy, the analogy of like breaking a leg. I'm going to use my arm because my leg won't be in the video. But if I break my arm, what do? I let it rest and heal, and eventually it gets better. Well, with anxiety or depression, I'm not going to speak vastly about that because I didn't go through a severe clinical depression or anything, and I don't want to talk about things that I haven't experienced deeply in that way. But in the aspect of this anxiety and in all of its ways, its forms, I've had a lot of deep depression from experiencing anxiety too. But anyways, when you break a limb, when you injure yourself physically, we allow the body to rest and heal. So why would it be any different for the mind and our emotional and psychological state, right? If we have anxiety, we're running our brains down with stress. Our body's worn down, our mind's worn down. We feel our mental reflexes start to slow. We feel worn down, tired, exhausted, we're revved up, So why would we not just let it rest? So treating the emotional and psychological mind in the same way that we would treat healing a physical bodily injury. Not adding anxiety to anxiety, not adding stress to stress, not adding more over-worried thoughts to the over-worried thoughts, because those thoughts will happen. You're going to have those worried thoughts, anxious thoughts, scary, intrusive thoughts, or whatever it might be. But you don't have to change that. You don't have to add to that. And that's okay. That's normal. That's part of the cortisol. And the adrenaline rush gives you these thoughts and feelings because that's how the physiological body moves. And that's what happens when these things occur in us. That's a natural response that shows that you have a healthy, functioning body and mind. So those things can happen and we can allow them to happen. We don't have to change that. The only thing that can get in the way and that we can work on with attitude, the right attitude, is our relationship, right? So how are we relating to these things that happen in the vast totality of our own awareness? Because that being which you are, who and what you are, stands prior to all forms that occur in consciousness. Awareness stands prior to the I or me. Is there a person that claims ownership of being aware? Or does awareness come into form as this person, as this experience? Does awareness stand prior to the I or me? Now, you don't have to focus on that if it makes you feel uncomfortable or that's a meditation practice. The who am I, or the meditation on I am. I am that I am. Meditation practice and spirituality, those kind of things aren't necessary to heal from anxiety. And I'm not going to sidetrack the video with that, but it is something I like to practice for myself. That sense of questioning, what's really going on here truly? Who am I really? Because anxiety for me and those experiences were so torturous, it made my life such a nightmare that I couldn't help it. I had to wake out of this dream. Because it was hard and a struggle and it sucked. And it just didn't seem like it made any sense. I wasn't trying to escape anything, to change my experience of struggle and anxiety, but it was that sense that, maybe there's something deeper that's going on here that's more truthful, that doesn't need to be based out of fear, that we don't need to live in a state of constant fear and anxiety, and that it's not ultimately a way that it's necessary to live. But anyways, focusing on awareness. When we stay as awareness, you see the relationship between thought and feeling. You want, it can help to have that space. between your sense of equilibrium and stability in yourself and thought and feeling, so that emotional reactivity, the more we can engage it and hold it close and embrace it and feel everything fully. That's another important aspect to a practice. We've got resting as awareness, to rest as awareness, as a state of being. Not a state of doing, but as a state of being. Rest as awareness. Unconditional radical acceptance. Accepting and embracing everything as it is, here and now, without trying to make it go away. Not accepting for the next 10 minutes, just accepting whatever experience might occur every time, here and now. The only thing you have to deal with and to cope with is here and now. It's this one moment. The past and the future are the mind. They don't exist here. They're in here. So it's okay to have thoughts and feelings, and those things can occur, and we can logically plan our life or reflect on certain experiences to learn. But they don't define us, and we don't need to live there. So resting as awareness, unconditional radical acceptance. Showing that compassion and care for yourself, feeling everything fully. Whatever might come up in awareness for yourself, whatever might come up in your experience now, embracing it fully, feeling everything fully. So you bring it close, you hug it, you show that tenderness and compassion, you bring it in close. And show that care about yourself and that value to all the parts that come up in yourself, to anything that might occur. That self-compassion and care, because there's no need for guilt or judgment or repression or shame, all these certain feelings and emotions that anxiety or depression or stuff can kind of bring up in a person. That's just a story. It's not, all these feelings and thoughts and stuff, they're nothing to do with you. That's not you. It's a conditioned reflex of the mind. It's just this constant thinking thing that just moves in emotion. In Buddhism, I think they call it the wheel of samsara. The wheel of samsara, simply just this circular pattern of thinking and putting our sense of identity and sense of self in our thoughts and feelings as to who and what we are, and attaching a self-image. The wheel of samsara. But all we need to do, resting as awareness, which is not a state of doing, it's a state of being. Resting as awareness. I forgot the second thing I said. Feeling everything fully is the third one. So embracing it and feeling it fully. Unconditional acceptance is the second one. And lastly, one of the most important things is letting go of those avoidance patterns. When we create these behaviors that we start avoiding things in our life because of these feelings or thoughts and stuff, that can create a barrier of anxiety that we need to start breaking. So we need to start getting out of our comfort zone and getting comfortable. It sounds paradoxical, but getting more comfortable being uncomfortable. Wearing that coat of uncomfortability that feels too tight and snug, and just resting in that uncomfortability, because we have to branch out from that comfort zone to get that growth. For that growth to occur, we have to step outside of our narrowed comfort zones that the anxiety introduced. And it's scary and can be uncomfortable, but I promise you, you will always be okay and that things are taken care of. And we just need to step outside, fall back, arms wide open, and just have that sense of trust and faith, whatever that might mean for you. But each and every person can absolutely get well. And I wish everybody nothing but the absolute best for yourself, and that you too might experience a life where you do not need to have fear or anything else hold you back. No limitation. Thank you.